When it comes to everything fantasy football, you have to ask one question. Don't you deserve a fighting chance? And now, welcome to Fighting Chance Live with your hosts, Kevin Tompkins and Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Gary Haddow.
That's right. It is Fighting Chance Live. I had to do it. I had to crack it open. But yeah, welcome in Fighting Chance Live. You got Kevin Tompkins here. That's me for some reason. Gary, how you doing, my man?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. It feels like we haven't podcasted in forever, and it literally has been 7 days since we did it. But I don't know. So it feels like it's been like a month or something. Maybe it's just because so much has happened in the last week with the NFL and figuring out what's actually going to happen with training camps coming up. But yeah, it's been wild.
It's probably because we got trash with Liz and Casey.
And there's a good chance when you pod till 1 a.m. that happens.
That was awesome. But yeah, this week we have Andrew Hall. Andrew, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Nice to be on the show, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. So Andrew is from Pro Football Network, and tell us anything more about you that we need to know, where we can find you on the internet.
And that's pretty much the gist. Yeah, I've been writing for PFN for about a year now. You find me on Twitter at AndrewHallFF. Doing a lot of stuff with the PFN Dynasty crew. We got a lot of great content coming out, and just trying to be a part of the team and making sure everybody's getting what they need from us.
You're definitely someone on Twitter that I feel like you and I are much better friends than the fact that this is the first time we've ever seen each other's face, like in a podcast or something. I feel like we're constantly interacting. I honestly think that we're in a bunch of leagues together, and I'm just realizing we might not be in any leagues together, but for some reason I feel like we are. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I've interacted with you a lot. I feel like we've done a lot of back and forth. I know that for a while after SFB9 ended, I was like, Tommy's my boy. Yeah. Right. Like Tommy came in second. It was a heartbreaking, you had nothing to do with that. Right. But I took it out on you.
Trust me.
For him, it was hard, but I'm saying I was taking it out on you. I'm like, God damn it, Gary. But I was like, it couldn't happen to a better guy, because I was a fan of yours last year. And so I was glad to see you win it. Again, couldn't have been happening to a better person. But yeah, I'm with you. I felt like we interact a lot. And I was thinking the same thing. Like this is, I think, Kevin, the first league that we're in other than Scott Fishbowl last year. Yeah. So I don't have any with Gary, and I don't know how that's possible. I'm in 16 leagues. Like, what the hell?
It's crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna have to definitely change that for sure. Because I would
talk to my wife.
At least I'm mostly doing like best balls and stuff. So I have my few. Yeah, so I have my few dynasties. I have my few redrafts. I have a couple home ones, and then from there, I mean, at least the best balls, you don't have to touch them. So it's a weight off my shoulders there. But yeah, we're gonna have to definitely get in more, at least the three of us, and then whatever we want to do. But yeah, so today, name of the game, we're gonna be talking some tight ends. But before we get to the tight ends, so we like when we get everybody on here, since it is the season of Scott Fishbowl. Obviously, we talked about being in the same division, Mother Brain, last year, Andrew. And how do you feel about your team this year?
I'm a huge fan of my team. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like last year, especially, I was kind of leaving the draft like, I think I did a pretty good job, and then week one came and I was like, what happened to my team? So I don't want to talk it up too much, but being at the 102 and getting Christian McCaffrey, I feel like was kind of, I don't know, pretty good start. I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of what I was looking for. So I was pretty happy with that. And overall, I think I just took the draft as it came to me, as they say, be liquid and just kind of let things come to you. Didn't really go in with a solid strategy, but I know I wanted to leave with more running backs than receivers in the first 12 picks, and kind of getting a little bit of depth there, because I think we're going to see a lot of weird injuries this year. There's going to be a whole lot of, COVID IR stuff. And I mean, who knows what we're going to see. So I thought depth was going to be more important this year than ever. And I feel like I came out pretty balanced and pretty deep. So I'm definitely pretty happy with the way things went.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how depth plays. I mean, obviously it's not just in every league that's going to be a thing, but I think just this, everything's just going to be off the wall this year. And with regard to your team, I love the fact that you got Fitz in the 16th as a QB3. Like, that's awesome. We'll see if your tight end one holds up. I got some questions about him. We'll use that as a little bit of a tease, but
yeah,
man, getting CMC and Drake, Bell as an RB3, guaranteed touches, and actually even like Damian. Like, I think that's just it. I like your team. I think it's nice and balanced, and it'll be interesting to see how things play out. And getting those backups for anyone that's not looking, like obviously, getting Carlos Hyde and Gio. I think those are two 18th and 19th round guys that could just have screaming value at some point in the season, as we have no idea what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah, and those are two of the guys I was targeting late, and I wouldn't say shocked, but I was pleasantly surprised when it came up to my turn, and Gio's still there, or Hyde's still there. I'm like, those are the guys they're kind of getting overlooked because they don't have a lot of flash. And something I know, I specifically go into the Scott Fishbowl looking for high floor more than high ceiling. Yep. I think it's something I've even learned from you and from Tommy, even from last year. It was you guys. Obviously, you have a lot of great players. You have a lot of good picks, and you got to get really lucky. But at the same time, the whole season goes on, and waivers are tough. You've got 22 roster spots, so the waivers are already pretty thin. So those lower end, those last half draft picks can really make your late season push. Yeah. So I was like, I really got to focus on those guys and get those late guys. And we'll definitely talk about my tight end one as we get into this. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I was going in with a plan, and I was real happy with the way that worked out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at right now. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick in the 16th round. I'm sorry, that's stealing. And I know how much Gary loves the Miami offense.
I do.
Yeah. Well, again, he's one of those guys that in theory, could be a wasted pick, right? Completely. Like he could become Tua could become the starter and all this. But my thought process is, I don't see the Dolphins rushing a rookie out without preseason, with the way this weird offseason is gone. And Fitz is one of those guys that can put up 5 hot weeks. And that's kind of what I need from a QB3, right? Like, I want someone who I can throw in there on Big Ben's week when he's going to play like crap, because he does that, right? So having Cousins and Ben as my top 2 and then Fitz as my 3rd, I felt like those are all pretty good veteran guys. They're all in the same situation they were last year. They've got a good base. So I'm feeling pretty happy about my chances.
I've said this all over the place, but I think that the Dolphins, I love Brian Flores in his spot as a head coach. I love what they've done. And I feel like when he got the job, he laid out saying, this is what we're going to do over the next 4 years. And come end of year 4, we're going to be making a push for the playoffs. Yep. And part of that was we're going to dump and we're going to sign free agents, and we're going to go heavy with draft picks, and we're going to have Fitz, and we're going to go high on a QB. And especially, like, I think they really did want Tua, and they're going to say, what better person to learn from than the guy that's been on 16 different teams and can teach you all the different systems in the world and really be.
He went to Harvard. Yeah,
and
he's a smart
I
dude.
Heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that.
I know. I think everybody has at this point, right?
Teach him how to grow a beard too.
That's right. How to wear a necklace.
Yeah.
That's
love that guy. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. Yeah, I think overall it went pretty well. How'd you do though, Gary? I know I looked at some of you guys' teams, but how do you feel about your team? Just as quick aside, as the champ, kind of, you think you got a chance to return?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did. I really like my team. I went into it with a specific plan. The only major pivot I had to do was I ended up taking Josh Allen and Tom Brady, and I wasn't really going for Josh Allen. And that the bye week of Josh Allen being week 11 throws you off when Foles and Fitz are your expected QB3s. And so that made me pivot and take Minshew, but I also got Fitz as my QB4 later. But I went RB heavy, and I, CMC, Jacobs, Drake. I say heavy, but then I look at my draft and I realize I didn't actually end up going that heavy. So I really do like it. And I came out of it being like, man, I didn't expect to feel this confident in my team. And what's crazy, and I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's ass, I like Kevin's team more than mine. And we talk a lot of shop, obviously, weekly, and we went into it with similar strategies. And he had the 102, as you know, and I love Kevin's team. I won't lie.
Yeah, because I feel like I could have gone more RB heavy, because that was my whole plan going in. I wanted to get go three running backs, 1, 2, 3, and then Breeze fell to me at 211, so I couldn't pass that up. Yeah. And then still took Gurley and Carson. I had to reach a little bit, being on the turn, you got 8 guys. So I took Robert Woods as our wide receiver 10, AJ Brown, and then happy with, getting Roethlisberger and Minshew as my 2 and 3. But yeah, just littered with upside, like finding Antonio Gibson. I think he's on your team too.
Yep.
Yeah, Boston Scott. Blake Jarwin was my tight end 1 in the 13th. Prashad Perryman, Lazard, Deshaun Jackson, should he, find a little bit of health. Eifert, guys like that. So, yeah, I try to make it a point, especially in the later rounds, because look at guys that came out of those late rounds last year. Guys like, DJ Chark was a final round pick or a free agent. Those guys, Waller was, I believe, your 16th rounder last year?
Yeah, my 17
still. That last half of the second second part of the draft, that's where you're going to make your squad, and obviously you did that, locking up all those tight ends in a row.
Well, I know too. We were talking in the 102 chat. If Drew Brees falls there at 211, we're smashing that. I mean, we talked about that for the whole week leading up to the draft, and I know almost everybody was assuming CMC was going to go first. And so then, of course, do we take Lamar Jackson? Do we go with Patrick Mahomes? Like, do we go quarterback? And all of us, I mean, again, Kevin, you and I know agreed, and a lot of us in the chat were thinking running back, right? Like, let's just lean on that. Yep. And I think it was JJ Zachariason that said Saquon and log out.
Yep.
Right. Like just take the known asset, and that was his only input for a while. It was terrific because it was just like mic drop. It was perfect. But I was with you. I kind of wanted to have a quarterback in the first 2 or 3 rounds. And when Brees didn't make it back, I don't think Matt Ryan made it back in mine either. I was like, well, all right, I guess I'm going to take the value that falls. And that's when I got Adams in the second round. And I mean, I think that's crazy value. So again, I think all of us did a pretty good job at taking the draft as it came to us. And I think we've all got really good teams, to be honest, and not blowing smoke. I think this is the kind of tournament that everybody has a chance, and especially with the way Scott Fish did the scoring this year, and kind of, I don't want to say leveled out the quarterbacks with the receivers a little bit, so that your super flex doesn't have to be a quarterback.
Yep.
I think that's kind of clever. So it really is going to throw a lot of good strategy talk throughout the whole season as we go through this.
I feel very strongly that if you left your Scott Fish Bowl draft being like, I don't know, I don't really like my team, like, what the fuck were you doing? Like, there's no reason to not like your team. Every position has value at every single pick. By far the most fun draft I've done, because I felt like you could be analytical at every single pick and look at every position and debate the actual merits of whether or not Josh Jacobs at 211, for me, 212, or Drew Brees at 211, whatever it is. And there was just there. It felt like parity at each pick, even though realistically, I would say there wasn't, but.
Yeah, that's what it always looks like, though, right? But I'm with you. If you leave the draft going, how did I screw this up? I mean, it's a slow draft. It wasn't like you did it all drunk. You know what I mean? You got no excuse.
I don't know about you guys. Jeez,
It was a long week for you there, Kev. Okay. No, I mean, I think the fastest draft was still, 3 or 4 days. There's no way you could say you were drunk the whole time, right? So it had to be a lot of planning, and everybody was so hyped about it. So even the slower drafts that were waiting on ADP or whatever, there's only so much you can really benefit from that. And I don't think there was anything crazy like there was last year with Melvin Gordon. I mean, there was the Raheem Mostert kind of rumor that he was talking about trade. That was it. And so that didn't really cause a lot of weird shift. Like last year, I took Melvin Gordon at the 110 in our draft, Kevin, and obviously that backfired horribly, right? I felt great about getting him at the 110 until he said he was holding out. And I was like, well, now we're in the 8th round and I'm screwed. So it was kind of weird. There wasn't any of that drama this year, but it still felt like a pretty good draft. I had a really good time with it.
For sure.
Yeah, same. Like, I'm looking at the only really thing that I could think of was maybe Dalvin Cook and people being scared off, but he was still RB5 in the ADP. So
none of that changed during the draft either. I mean, that was all it's just static throughout. Yeah, which was good. I mean, I'm sure Scott prefers that because then you don't have as many, upset people or confusion about things or can I trade this pick or change, you don't have any of that for him, which I'm sure is plenty annoying as it is already.
Yeah, he's got a lot on his plate, certainly.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's honestly, it's the best time of year. Not even just for the football, for connecting with people.
And the T-shirts, man, come on, you get new gear, right? Come on, great time of year.
My wife was like, "So we're throwing away a bunch of shirts, right? Because you just got 5 new shirts in," and I was like, "That's fine with me. These are the most comfortable shirts I own. I absolutely love them." So
yeah, I still wear my Scott Fish Bowl 9 shirt all the time.
Hell yeah! Shall we jump into it?
Let's dive in.
Let's do it. So the way that we normally do positional breakdowns, we kind of just do them as a group, and we'll kind of just in this particular group, there's not a ton of disparity. There will be once we get past the first half, but so I think we'll just kind of do them in chunks of 3 at a time and then talk about them and kind of go from there. So with Kevin, we have, his 1, 2, 3 is Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews. With Gary, his Kelsey, with me. His 1, 2, 3 is Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, and I can't believe it. With Andrew, his 1, 2, 3 is Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews. I don't think there's too much shock there. I do have some questions, and we'll get to the other ones that are written out. But just as I'm going through everything and looking, Kelce and Kittle feel like they're on a tier, and I don't know about Andrews. Like, I think that we're all just banking on this like crazy high touchdown upside that we saw last year, but he had down weeks where like a touchdown barely saved him, and he did have some down weeks when he didn't have a touchdown. I'm just looking here, like a 3 for 15, a 2 for 21, a 2 for 45, 1 for 14. Ultimately, like, I get that just comes with the position, right? Like Kelce will have a couple of those, Kittle will have a couple of those. But is Andrews as locked in as your tight end 3 as it seems to be consensus-wise across the league, across the industry?
Well, I'll kind of jump in on that. I mean, for me, I think you're exactly right. It's Kelce, Kittle as 1, 2, and those can even be interchangeable. They're really close to me because it depends on how you look at the position. Obviously, Kelce is a little bit older, but Kittle's kind of the main option on that offense. And so both of those guys are right up there. And I think then if you go, there's a break. And then for me anyway, there's like 3 or 4 guys that kind of fit into that next tier. And Andrews is at the top of that tier, but those guys that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kind of range are all closer than the 1, 2 are, right? There's that bigger gap. I do put Andrews 3rd, and it's partially groupthink that's getting to me a little bit on that, just because everybody's putting him 3rd. I don't think there's any real argument to put anyone over him, right? Because they're all pretty close. And when it comes to ranking, a lot of times for me anyway, I don't do projections, or at least not yet. I haven't done that level of math yet. I do plan on getting into that at one of these days. But my thought was Andrews is locked into a solid position. He's gotten a lot of attention from Lamar. The other, like Marquise Brown and Devin Duvernay and Willie Snead, like who else do they even have now on the Ravens, right? So I think he's got a similar kind of workload that Kittle gets. I'm with you though. He's a little risky. And I don't think I own Andrews in any leagues just because I'm willing to wait longer on tight end and most people aren't. So for me, he's 3rd, but it's kind of like a meh 3rd, like meh.
I have him in a lot of keeper leagues. Like he was like my tight end du jour last season, getting him around like round 9 or 10. And so luckily, like I have him, and I'm actually happy keeping him. I mean, there's no tight end after Andrews that's worth keeping, in my opinion, in a a normal keeper league. But Kevin, would you have Kelce over Kittle?
Yep.
Where are you ever taking Kittle over Kelce? Is there any reason that you would do that?
The only reason I would think to take Kittle over Kelce, it brings me to target distribution, really, because look at Kelce and with Tyreek Hill and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you got Mahomes throwing the ball everywhere, but they clearly want to run the ball. They drafted a running back in the 1st round, so then they're going to clearly throw the ball. So when I look at Kittle, and now that with Debo, maybe he's going to miss a couple. Maybe he misses the 1st week or the 2nd week. Maybe he doesn't miss any time at all. But Kittle is the engine that runs that San Francisco passing attack, at least for right now, until maybe they can get some deep shots with Ayuk and get Debo, back from that Jones fracture. But as far as Kittle, I haven't really given it too much thought. I still think that Kelce is a clear number 1, but I don't hate anybody that puts Kittle over Kelce. I can get it because the dude is a stud. I think he's got more touchdown upside as well, that he can maybe get over the hump on Kelce. But just for the consistency, the durability with Kelce, he's going to be my tight end 1 more often than not.
How strange is it that those two both only had 5 touchdowns? When Kelce, I'm in a tight end premium league, and it's weird. We go through the NFL playoffs in this league, and I had Kelce on that team, and that one quarter against the Texans where he put up like 103 touchdowns, I think in a 10, maybe 9-minute span. Just like I felt like that one quarter was like, wait, this is doable from like a tight end. Like this guy is amazing. And this is following on the heels of Kelce breaking the all-time yardage record the years before until Kittle did it like 32 minutes later. Right. So yeah, it's a fun battle to watch these two. I will say just my one last thing, since I am a little bit of a Niner homer. And when it comes to Kittle, This is actually the opposite. I wonder if Kittle is going to be in blocking a tiny bit more because they now have Trent Taylor, they have Jalen Hurd, they have, as you said, Ayuk, and then once Debo gets back, I think he's the best tight end in football because of the blocking added aspect to his game that Kelsey's good at. But I mean, Kittle's the best. He's so freaking good. So any league that rewards you as a tight end for the blocking that you do that is highlight worthy, I want to make sure I have Kittle in that league.
No, that's fair, and I think most people would take Kittle over Kelsey in dynasty leagues.
Yeah,
I don't want to say most. Maybe that's not fair, but that's maybe the one place that age has a factor. Yeah. I think you're still going to get monster value for Kelsey in a trade and all that kind of stuff. But if you give me a chance to pick one or the other in a dynasty startup, I'm probably leaning Kittle. And just because of longevity, he's already proven that he's a beast and he's going to have 10 years ahead of him. I don't know if Kelsey can do it for 10 years. Yeah. Because he's not young, but he's not old. I mean, we talk about old as they're 30 and it makes me feel ancient, but you get what I mean? Like a 30-year-old tight end, 35-year-old tight end. I mean, you start to get up there, you diminish. So that's about the only way. But yeah, I'm with you. Kittle does do an amazing job blocking. He's just a beast. He's just a beast.
To watch.
Yeah, and I have one more question too for both of you. I'll start with Andrew. Do you think is there an avenue for Mark Andrews to get up into that Kelsey Kittle tier this year? Do you think? What do you think?
I'll let you go first, Gary.
I say yes. I definitely think so. We haven't actually said it, even though everybody it's the reason he's solidified as 3 is because Hurst is gone, right? His real competition is Nick Boyle, which. He's a last round pick of Scott Fishbowl. Kudos to you, Andrew. Other than that, it's Marquise Brown, who's amazing, but they really complement each other with the different areas of the field that they're attacking. And I mean, can he be that tier? Week 1 of this past season, 8 for 8 for 108 and a touchdown. The week after, 9 for 8 and 112 and a touchdown. Those are the types of things that you're looking for in your tight end. And as somebody, like I said, I was an Andrews truther, and to start out the season that with both those games, I was like, done it. Just give me the trophy.
We were victory lapping on Twitter.
Oh, hardcore. And then week 3 was 3 for 15.
Well, to kind of go on that, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. Lamar looks for Andrews, right? As a running quarterback, I think we've seen this more than not. I think with a running quarterback, they tend to look for shorter distribution, right? They're like, I'm going to find a hole they're not looking for long bombs on every play. They're like, I'm going to find a hole if I can run, and then they kind of get outside the pocket and look at that. Andrews is in the flat. Yep. So I think he gets a lot more opportunity with a running quarterback like that. I will say I do think there is a chance that Andrews can jump into that tier. And I think it's really going to have to be more of Kittle and Kelsey falling than Andrews leaping up, if that makes sense. I think you're more likely to see Andrews stay where he is and kind of plateau, at least for now. Tight ends take a little while to develop. I do like the fact that his only competition is Nick Boyle. And the main reason I took him with my last round of Scott Fishbowl is there is a chance that Andrews with diabetes could opt out of the season with COVID and all this. So again, I'm looking for late round flyers that could be something and easily droppable before the first game. So I thought, Nick Boyle's a prime target for that, because even if Andrews is out for any stretch, Boyle's going to get a lot of those targets, and I like that upside. But in general, I think what I think we're going to see is Andrews stays at or maybe a little better than his last season, and maybe some of those 3 for 31 kind of games get out of there. Yeah. But I think what I think is more likely to happen is Kelsey and Kittle don't break records this year. And they kind of come down a little bit. Maybe their touchdowns go up, but their overall production comes down and lines up more with Andrews. That's kind of what I see happening. So can Andrews jump them, either one of them or both? Yeah, but I don't know if it's going to be because Andrews is really blowing up, if that makes sense.
No, I get it. And Petey Stitz from Fighting Chance Fantasy, outside of Hollywood, who was Jackson really throwing to, if not Andrews? And that's a great point, too. Because you look at that target distribution, it's incredibly narrow. Outside of Marquise Brown, I mean, who else is he really throwing to?
Well, they don't really have a pass catching running back either. I mean, they don't have an Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley or somebody like that gets, or Zeke or whatever, that gets 80 targets out of the backfield. Yeah, they've got guys that can catch, but when you have a running quarterback that is a running back in a sense and can put up running back numbers, I don't know if you need to throw the ball that much, and I don't know if there's enough targets to really warrant a third or fourth option on the offense anyway. So it kind of fits with their whole scheme, really, their whole game plan.
It's not a running back show, but I feel like this is the perfect time to get into a J.K. Dobbins. And I don't know, man. That dude's got some pass catching chops.
Of course.
He's going to be money, but maybe not this year. So.
Yeah. And I think that offense, he's going to have to learn a little bit. But that offense, at this point, we haven't seen them utilize a running back that way. That's not to say they won't. I'm just saying our evidence isn't there yet. But that's very true. I mean, Dobbins could step in week 6 and be a great, Saquon Light out of the backfield and just start blowing up out of the backfield. So we don't know yet. But yeah, those rookies are always kind of a little bit of a dart throw for me.
Yeah. And Petey, you haven't seen the movie Memento, so stop dropping Memento references.
Maybe he did and he just doesn't remember.
Ooh.
Meta? Too far?
Sneaky fit right there.
All right. So the next 3, it's kind of the next 6 that I'm particularly interested in, but these next 3. So Kevin has Ertz, Waller, and Higbee. I have Ertz, Ingram, and Waller. And Andrew has Ingram, Ertz, and Cook. So I want to start with Ingram, actually, because I almost decided that I was going to bump Ingram to 4 and potentially even to 3 when I was looking at his stats from last season. So, Andrew, sell us on Ingram at 4 and why he is the next great tight end.
Well, it's tough. And like I said before, I put like kind of 3 through 7 kind of all in one big blob. And if again, in rankings, it's hard for me to rank somebody based on potential injuries. I don't think that's really a fair way to do it. Yes, Ingram has had a lot of injuries. There's no way to know if he's going to have more. Even injury-prone guys have not been injury-prone, right? So that totally defeats the narrative, right? Keenan Allen was injury-prone, and then all of a sudden he's never had an injury since. So what does that even mean, right? Like it just, to me, it's not fair. You can't punish a guy for getting hurt. So my logic is Ingram is on a stellar offense with a lot of options, and I'm high on all of the Giants this year. And I think if you look at all the numbers, he's one of the few rookie tight ends that broke out and became Gronk-esque, and has had injuries kind of derail him. So in my mind, that's why he's not 3, and that's why he's 4. Yeah. But a lot of people, and you guys aren't far off, obviously having Ingram still in your top 7, but I've seen people that put Ingram at like 10. And I don't get that. I'm like, there's no reason for that unless you're guaranteeing an injury, and then you know something I don't, right? Yeah. Like Ingram, if you're going based on talent, I've watched him. I've had him in a few leagues because I ended up getting him as my like tight end 2. And when I had the rankings last year, I think he was my second tight end, and I was getting him as the 5th or 6th one off the board. And I was just happy as a clam and shit, right? I'm like, this is perfect. Like I'm getting my guy, and he definitely has up and down weeks. I'm not going to make it seem like he's the perfect tight end. With those injuries are frustrating, but if you can handcuff him with Caden Smith or even get another tight end later to fill in for those random weeks, I think you're going to be much happier with Ingram than you will with Ertz. Yeah. And to kind of go into that and dovetail there, Ertz is getting a solid amount of competition from Goddard right now. And so I think what you're going to start to see in that offense too, bringing in, J-Jaw having a second year and Alshon still being Alshon and still getting the ball, and then bringing in a guy like Jalen Reagor, that offense is getting a lot more mouths to feed. So to me, a guy like Ertz, no offense to Ertz as a talent, he's got a lot more competition. You got Slayton, you got Tate, you got Shepard in the receivers for the Giants. I don't know. Slayton kind of scares me or makes me feel a little bit happy because he can get downfield, but Tate and Shepard don't do much. But I'm saying like they can still move the ball, and he's got the middle of the field. Yeah. Ingram does, but he can get long. So I feel like him and Ertz are kind of, I don't know, you could flip a coin and be right half the time. So I just put him ahead of Ertz. And then Cook, I just love Drew Brees this season. I think if you're going on rankings, and you've seen what Cook did last year, and that offense, I think, is going to take even another step forward with Emmanuel Sanders and all this. So I think that whole team is going to they're going to try to ride to the Super Bowl. So I'm kind of trying to catch a little lightning in a bottle with Cook at 6. So that's kind of where those 3 are all right there. And again, depending on how the season plays out, you could shuffle all 4 of those if you put Andrews in that group, and I wouldn't be unhappy. I'd be like, yeah, I was close, Yeah.
Completely.
Lots to unpack there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with Ingram because, there's all those guys. There's Tate, there's Slayton, there's Barkley, there's, Shepard. My reasoning there with Ingram, I'm not as high on him, and I'm not really as high as on those mid-round tight ends just because of the prices of guys like Ingram and like Hunter Henry. That Ingram you're buying on on the promise. You had I'm not going to spend a 7th or 8th round on a Evan Ingram when I can get a Dallas Goedert, or I can get a Jonnu Smith, guys like that, rounds later, and not have to worry too much about,
So ridiculous. You just put those two with Ingram in one sentence.
I'm trying to think of lower. I'm going to slap you, Gary. I swear to God.
Well, we'll come back to those two. I take issue with those two and with the entire industry just inflating them way too much, but we'll come back to that.
But Ingram does have his positives because we know Jason Garrett loves to use the tight end. So that's, there's a feather in his cap, but I'm not going to be buying at that price just because you're buying him at his promise. If he can vault into that top 3 or 4, which we know he can do in a 16-game season, great, but I'm not going to pay for it because I want to see it first. So,
well, I'll put it this way, though. You're exactly right on the price is high, right? This is kind of where it gets down to that where I even put Andrews in that bundle, right? So what I'm saying is I rank all 4 or 5 of those guys pretty equally, which means I'm not going to reach for one. I'd rather get the last one, right? You want to be the last one to take a guy in a tier, in my opinion, anyway. You don't want to start a run. You want to finish one so you get the value left over.
Yep.
Right. So the idea there is I'm with you. I'm probably not going to get Ingram in a lot of redraft leagues this year just because I'm with you. I don't feel like paying a 5th or 6th round pick for him. That doesn't mean I don't think he's worth it. I just think there are other players at other positions that I tend to find still on the block. They're like, oh, I'll take that guy. Right. I'll let this person fall to me and I'll wait because I'm willing to. There's still 3 tight ends I find equivalent. I don't need to reach for a tight end. I'll just wait to get one. So I'm with you. I'm not saying that his ADP makes sense. I'm just saying I rank him pretty highly, which ends up meaning if he's the 8th tight end and I take him in the 10th round, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, that's terrific. That's fine with me.
Did you guys know that Evan Ingram had more targets than Travis Kelce last season on a per game basis? He had 8.5 per game in 8 games.
Well, that's pretty impressive. And if he stays healthy for the other 8, man, look out, right? But that's always been the issue
you're looking for. Yeah.
Yep.
So I get the ADP disparity, and if you're getting him in the 5th or 6th, like that's kind of tough. But I think that if every tight end plays 16 games, Ingram is a top 3 tight end.
Agreed.
And I think that he bumps probably Andrews or Kittle out. And I can't believe I'm even saying that. Ertz is the man. I agree. Like, this is actually perfect. The Ertz slander is ridiculous. Like, Ertz is the closest thing to a set it and forget it for the value. If your strategy is to go and get, a locked in top 4 tight end in the round 3 or 4, done. Just go get him. Like, I traded the 16th overall pick in a dynasty league to get Ertz, and people were like, really, you're going in on Ertz? And I was like, I just got a top 4 tight end for at least 2 or 3 years. And I don't believe that Dallas Goedert has any impact on Zach Ertz unless Zach Ertz is out. I think that Goddard can do his thing, and Ertz is still doing his thing and still being a top tight
end. That was only because they had no receivers last year. They were literally running out Greg Ward. You know what I mean? Like, of course, both tight ends are going to eat when there's no one else eating. That's kind of the point. And I think, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you're exactly right. He's still in that tier for me, right? I'm not calling him trash. I just think Goddard is coming on strong. He's taking some of that tight end target because even in 12 personnel, even when you've got 2 tight ends on the field, Wentz can't look both directions. You know what I mean? He can't get both tight ends a target in the same play.
He one direction first, and he does not look at Dallas first.
That's fair. He can look both directions. The only reason
he goes to Dallas is because Ertz is covered because he is the receiver 1 on the team.
But that's a whole nother argument, right? He warrants better coverage, right? So I'm just being honest. Like, he's going to get the better middle linebacker, maybe even a double with a nickel cornerback or something. He's going to get a lot more attention because he's the better guy. And again, if I'm valuing all of these guys pretty equally, well, yeah, I'm giving, but I'm saying, like, if I'm valuing all of these players equally, and I don't disagree with you. Ertz for me last year was tight end 3, right? He was like locked and loaded, and Ingram was right there behind him, and those two were kind of flipping by themselves before Andrews blew up, right? But my logic there is if I'm gonna pay up for Ertz, why not save a little bit of money, save 3 rounds or 4 rounds worth of ADP and get Goddard, right? To me, they're not that much different for the cost difference. The cost is much different than the output. And that's all it is. You know, it depends on how you like to build your lineup too. I mean, I am in a lot of leagues that are not tight end premium. And I do think the tight end premium leagues tend to boost the tight ends within their own position, but I don't really see them moving up the ADP or up the draft board or things like that against other positions unless there's, you know, tiered PPR and other things like this where you kind of flush everything and make it even. So just a straight up like tight end premium doesn't change his value in round to me. I love when people do that. Like, oh, it's tight end premium. You got to get a tight end early. I'm like, go for it, man. Help yourself. That's fine with me. I'll take Kenyon Drake in the third, like we got in the Scott Fish, right? Because everybody's reaching for tight ends. Like you can have Andrews at 206. That's fine with me. Like I think, you know. So again, I'm right with you. I'm with you on that, and I'm not really slandering Ertz as much as I am just kind of looking at the reality of that offense. They're going to have to redo something there. Right. Yeah. Yes, it's a lot of the same personnel, but last year they were scraping the bottom of the barrel for receivers. I don't think they're going to have that issue this year. And that just makes me a little worried about Ertz.
I got to go on my little tangent here. Are they not going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel? Like Djax is one injury away. Like, whatever. Like he had his injury. Then they have a rookie and then they have Greg Ward. By the way, my final pick of Scott Fish was Greg Ward, and I was like, "Oh hell yeah!" He's pretty much the wide receiver 2 going into the season, right?
That's a bold take.
Can't be worse than Aguilar.
Who else is the number 2?
Well, I still you're forgetting Alshon. I think a lot of people think he's dead and gone. He's still there.
He's going to be 6 to 10 weeks out.
I see, but I'm not 100% on that. I know that I'm optimistic, right? I guess that's maybe my problem. I don't think Alshon's going to miss 6 weeks. If he does, fine. I get it. But I'm saying I still think he's on paper anyway. He's the wide receiver 1. I do think J-Jaw is going to come back. Wide receivers rarely perform in their first year. I think there's a lot of people that looked at him as a potential savior last year, like a lot of us are doing with Rager this year, and he didn't perform, and he didn't get up to speed and all of that. I think he's going to come to this season with a chip on his shoulder and be like, all right, we're going to get there. And so I don't know. I just think that there's more of a chance that you see a better passing attack overall, and it doesn't have to filter through the 2 tight ends. Just putting it out there. I haven't seen the evidence, but
over under number of games Alshon misses to start the season. I will put it at 5. Over under.
Well,
so he's not on the PIP. If it is over, he is on the PIP.
Well, so that's even. That's still, I mean, it's an odd situation because he could still miss 6 games and not be put on the PUP list, right? Like there's still that option. But my logic is going to be my head says longer, my heart says lower, right? My head says it's going to be 8 games, but my heart's like, come on, Alshon, you can do it, and he's only going to miss 3. So 5's a pretty good over under. I would say I'll be optimistic with everything going on. It's probably not going to happen, but I'll say lower. I'll give the under. No, I am not. I am not. No, I'm a Bengals fan, sadly. So I'm actually looking at this from the eyes of AJ Green, who missed, he only missed 16 games last year. I mean, that was definitely in the plan. That was all he missed. He was supposed to be on the PUP list or something. Only missed 2 or 3 weeks, and it turned into a whole season. So I've seen it. But I don't know. I just think Alshon's going to come back sooner than people think, and he's being ignored heavily, especially in drafts. And I know I can't get anything for him in a trade, but.
Alshon's a lot younger than AJ Green, so we have that on his side.
Thank God. But I'm not saying Alshon's great. Look, you got me on a weird tangent where I'm defending Alshon Jeffrey. I don't know how this happened, but
this is all about distrust Dallas Goedert.
I don't blame you.
They're both good, Ertz and Goedert.
Yes.
But I will say this too. I think Goddard's going to be blocking a lot more. I think it was a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it was the sleep. No, it wasn't the sleeper episode. But I was talking about Dallas Goedert being, since he's been in the league, he's had the highest grade of run blocking per Pro Football Focus since he's been in the league over Kittle. I think he's going to be. He'll be certainly used in the passing game. Obviously, he's just going to go. Wentz is going to go with what he knows. And if people believe in Carson Wentz so much, I'm down on him. I'm down on a lot of that Eagles offense outside of Miles Sanders, obviously Ertz and Goddard. But if you believe in Carson Wentz, you have to believe in Zach Ertz just by default because Jeffrey potentially could miss those 6 games. But I'd say it's more likely than not. We'll see. But when I was looking at stats too, Zach Ertz was second in air yards last year. Like that threw me for a friggin' loop.
Oh, he likes to take those sideline passes down. So
that's true. Yeah.
Kevin, why don't you go into Higbee? We each have a different 6, right? So you have Higbee, I have Waller, and Andrew has Cook, who honestly probably should be my 6, but we'll get to why not. So let's go with Higbee, and then we can kind of debate Cook and Waller.
I mean, I really do like Higbee, and I'm not super worried about Gerald Everett, like a lot of people want to say. Try to bring Higbee down. I know we had Tyler Higbee week a couple weeks ago on Twitter, where everybody the pitchforks came out for him, trying to say Gerald Everett is still a thing. Gerald Everett's on his final year of his contract. They drafted Bryson Hopkins. I don't think that Gerald Everett really fits in their plans. I think he's going to be gone after this year. And yeah, they gave Higbee a contract extension, I believe, before last season, but that remains, I don't think Everett is long for the Rams. I think Higbee is going to be their guy going forward, at least for the interim. That 5-game stretch that he had, if he had just had that, he was tied at 19. Over Jonnu Smith. That's 56 targets, 43 catches, 522 yards to end 2019. No less than 85% of snaps in that stretch. But the question does lie: is that an anomaly? You're going to have to pay a little bit. You're going to have to pay the Evan Engram price maybe a little bit lower, about that 7th round. But one thing that you have in Higbee's favor is that the Rams are going to be throwing the ball all over the place because their defense is going to be atrocious. Jared Goff's going to throw the ball over 600 times. I think that's pretty locked in. So, yeah, I'm still on Higbee. I think he's still going to be in that top 6 discussion, give or take, a spot here and there. But I'm still in on Higbee, screw the haters.
Well, I got a question for you on this. Do you think Higbee and Everett relate them, I guess, or pair them up with Ertz and Goddard? Is Higbee more like Ertz and Everett more like Goddard to you, or is it the other way? Because I think Everett, in my opinion, and from what I saw last year, and again, I don't have the numbers in front of me like this right now, but I know Everett was out for some of those games that Higbee did really well. So, of course, his target share is going to go up. He doesn't have competing tight end targets. It's no one else to take him. And he was facing some of the easiest tight end defenses there were. So he was getting like the best possible situation, and he did well with it. Hooray. But I don't think you should extrapolate that out and say that's always going to happen. I don't know if that's how that works. So my logic is going to be if I'm going to be picking somebody as a top 6, 7, 8, whatever tight end, I want that to be more of a sure thing than 5 games at the end of 2019. Just myself. That doesn't mean I don't like taking risks. Clearly I do. It's just I'm not sold on Higbee that much. He's actually the guy that didn't make my top 12. Right. For me, he's like in that 13 to 16 range. And I can't find a way to get him in there. There's too much unknown with that offense. I mean, the offensive line is atrocious, and who knows what kind of running back play we're going to get. There's 4 guys now that McVay was saying is going to be, and then they get rid of Cooks, but they still got your boy, Bobby Trees. You know what I mean? Like they got a lot of other options. I don't know. I feel really uncertain about both Philly and LA, if I'm being honest. And I'd rather have Ertz and Goddard over either of the Rams guys myself.
Yep. I have Higbee at 9, splitting the difference between you guys solely for the possibility of what was shown. But they went out and got Van Jefferson. They already had Josh Reynolds, so they obviously saw something they liked. They went out and got Cam Akers. If they did like Darrell Henderson, then I just think that they brought in, I don't know. I feel like he's just getting into a narrative now of, right, do you bring in guys because you need them, or do you bring in guys because you don't want Higbee to be your receiver 1 or receiver 2 because you would prefer to have Cooper and Woods kind of be your guys to go to? And I think Higbee will have his games. I think he's going to have more down games. And had Everett been there, that's the biggest thing. I like having one of them, and I'm probably always going to go with the cheaper one and just go with Everett as a tight end 2 and just hope that he pops when he pops, because he's also just like a freak athlete. So.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I did in the Scott Fishbowl is I waited on tight end. And I know looking at your roster and Tommy's roster, you guys both got late tight end values. Yeah. And so I said, well, okay, well, maybe I go with that blueprint and I just punt tight end. And I just kind of move on, right? And I don't look at any tight ends until, maybe the 10th or 11th round. And I think Higbee went pretty early in mine. I don't remember exactly where, but I love when Higbee goes early because I'm like, great, one less player I got to worry about. Like, I don't have to, I'm not going to reach for him. If I'm ranking him 15-ish, which is kind of where I have him, if I'm ranking him 15-ish and somebody takes him as tight end 6, yeah, perfect, right? Like that's exactly what I want. So I'm not necessarily out on Higbee, and I'm not going to say I'd pass on him at every cost, but it just seems like similar to the Ingram argument, but in the other direction. I have Higbee so low that by the time I'm ready to take him, he's already gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not excited about him. He doesn't wow me, I guess. The stats are great on those 5 weeks, but I don't know. I just haven't seen it for a full season, and that whole offense is just chaos right now. So I just can't trust it.
That's how I feel about Dallas Goedert. Going to pass on him, and I'll pick him up in week 8 because he's on waivers.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I'm going to talk about 2 guys here, and then you can kind of tell me why you have them flipped, and that's going to be Waller and Cook. Waller, to me, I think that the offense helped, the offseason moves helped Waller more than I think they helped when other people say they would detract. Other people would say he's not going to get the target floor that he's gotten, and I'm going to say he was clearly, kind of their go-to guy. And I think that having the ball being able to spread around between Ruggs and Edwards, who I absolutely love, Renfro, Josh Jacobs, who's going to be healthy, I think that Waller is going to have a really nice floor week to week. He showed up pretty well, and he's just going to get more and more integrated and in sync with Derek Carr. Behind him is Jared Cook. And I actually love Jared Cook. He's probably my go-to tight end other than one of the later round guys because I think his touchdown upside is just so high. Mm-hmm. I will forever remember the Niners-Saints game where it was just like this 45, 42, whatever battle, and Cook just torched us for 2 40-yard touchdowns because he's Jared frickin' Cook. Despite being 45 years old, he's one of the most ripped guys in the locker room who can burn you. And really, to me, it becomes Waller's the PPR play. Anything that's not a full PPR, unless I'm going to go with Cook, just because his touchdowns are there. And I think people gave Cook this little knockdown because of Manny Sanders. And I don't know. Manny Sanders is a conglomerate of all the other wide receivers that are there. And Cook is still pretty much the third receiving option behind Kamara and Thomas. So they're even with me. I like Waller a little tiny bit more in PPR because he should have a better floor. Cook has a better ceiling.
I don't disagree with that. And like you said, I've got them flipped. And that's the end of that second tier for me, right? Mm-hmm. Where I've got Andrews, Ingram, Ertz, Cook, Waller. Like those guys to me are all kind of bunched together. And I mean, if you're going to tell me that you have Waller third, I'm probably not going to fight you too much, right? Like, okay, they're close enough for me. I'm fine with that. But I tend to lean Cook over Waller for a couple of reasons. And I know you know this about Waller, but they added Witten. They've still got Foster Moreau. Don't forget about Tyrell the Gazelle, right? Come on, you still got Tyrell Williams in that offense. And I'll be honest, I have no clue how long Derek Carr is going to hold his job this season. I was actually targeting him in the Scott Fish Bowl if I could get him late enough, and he went earlier than I wanted. And my thought was, if I can get Carr as a QB3, I feel pretty happy about that, right? Like I think he's got a chance to play the whole season. But when they're paying Mariota the kind of money they are, and that was a John Gruden move, that wasn't necessarily like a holdover from the previous regime. So to me, that speaks volumes. That's an action, not just words. So I'm looking at it like they added a bunch of rookies. They've got a bunch of other tight ends now. Like there's a whole bunch of other things. Does the Waller breakout return? Does he have the same upside? So it just makes me a little nervous, and that's why I put him at the bottom of that second tier. I mean, talk about splitting hairs, right? He's not 6, he's 7. How dare you? Like, no, I mean, you're right there. So I'm a little more hesitant. But when it goes to Cook, I'm with you a little bit. Emmanuel Sanders, I think, helps Cook. Manny Sanders is more of he's a route catch guy. He's not necessarily going to burn you. I mean, he's used to be quick, but he's 33 or 34 now? I don't know. Yeah. He's getting older, so he's going to be a short route yak guy, right? And so I think that helps a lot. And Cook has still obviously played with Drew Brees for years and is a very good safety blanket for him. And I think you're right. In the red zone, who does he look for? The big guy. That's Cook. Yep. So I think both of those guys have high potential, but I squeak Cook ahead just a little bit and put him 6 and Waller 7, but I'm not going to fight you on those.
I got to just say the Mariota thing, and then Kevin, you can finish us off here, but Mariota gave us Delaney Walker, perennial tight end 6 or better. If Mariota comes in, I actually think that's great for Darren Waller. I have no.
But I don't know if Mariota's working with Waller. I mean, if this was a normal offseason, I guess this is like that normal narrative where he'd be working with the second tier and probably getting Foster Moreau more love, right? Like that's kind of one of those things where he's not playing with Waller, but nobody is right now. So you might have a point, right? I mean, it's one of those things where you're right about Mariota too. He's a fine tight end quarterback. So I'm not against that. It's just. It makes me nervous anytime an offense changes like that because you don't know what it's going to happen. You can't predict it. And that little bit of uncertainty just knocks them one little bit. So what do you think, Kevin? Where are you at with those two?
As far as Waller, he's the last of my guys that I will spend an early round pick on, early to mid, because after that, you've got your Higbees, Ingrams, you got guys like that I'm not really going to touch value wise. Cook seems to be sliding a lot, and because of what we mentioned before, that people, are thinking, hey, Manny Sanders is in town now, maybe he's going to take a little bit of that work, but I think the opposite. I think he's locked in top 12 guy with a gigantic floor, certainly in that offense, even though the Saints are running the ball a lot more than they've they're trending that way. But yeah, Jared Cook is a locked in guy. For me in the top,
you got him 10. It just seems like it's harsh.
It's really, you're looking at the tight end position, and it's a strength now versus years past, where you've got all the influx of youth now.
That's true.
With Hayden Hurst, with Dallas Goedert, with Evan Ingram, with guys like that, and so now we're not talking about those four guys, and then it's a free for all on waivers. You've got all those guys, and it's really just the strength of the position. I'd be fully, obviously I'd be happy with Cook in my roster. And Waller, as far as Waller goes, I think that I have a slight worry just because of Hunter Renfrow being there and occupying some of that space there. But I think Waller is clearly, going to be the guy there, despite all the rookies they drafted. Touchdown regression too. I think he's going to be boosting up those 3 touchdowns that he had last year, and maybe he's going to flirt with 1,000 yards, but I think the touchdowns are going to be coming up, at least in that offense. It's a sneaky offense that I think has a chance to be a lot better than people think. So I think Waller is going to be the biggest part of that. If he can boost up those touchdowns, and maybe keep like an 80,000 line, give or take, I think he's pretty locked into that top 6.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, makes sense. So we're getting into our third quadrant here. So Kevin has Ingram at 7, Dallas Goedert at 8, and then Hunter Henry at 9, the forgotten man, I feel like. And then I have Cook, Hurst, and Higbee. Honestly, Cook and Waller are the same person or same tier, whatever. Andrews has Waller, Goedert, and Henry. So I feel like here we're really talking about Goedert and Henry. I'll get into my guys later as they pop up, but just sell me on Goedert. Like, tell me why, because I don't know. A tight end 2 on a team, it's not.
Kevin, I'll let you go first. I went into a diatribe on him a little bit earlier. I'll let you have a chance.
Oh, well, thank you, guys.
I've heard him say this before, just so you know.
I know you have, and I just want to hear him say it again.
Was his Goedert.
Go ahead, man.
I really just think with the offensive, the guys around him, that the wide receiver room, that we don't know what's going to be happening with Jeffrey, with Deshaun Jackson, that I think he's going to be locking on to pretty much 2 guys, Goedert and Ertz, and then he's going to have Miles Sanders in the backfield. He's got Boston Scott as well, but that wide receiver room, Wentz hasn't really worked with, Jalen Reagor. And I like Reagor, but I'm starting to, lean on him a little bit just because I don't know the work that he's going to be getting. So I think Wentz is just going to go with what he knows and what he trusts, and those 2 tight ends. I think Goddard's, they're not ships passing in the night. I don't think Goddard's going to be taking over that Ertz, anytime soon. I think Ertz has a lot left in the tank, but I do think that
not unless Ertz leaves. I mean, if Ertz leaves, then maybe. But yeah, I'm with you. Right. If they're both on the team, it's Ertz's role 1. I agree. Right,
but if Ertz gets hurt, I think Goddard's a locked-in top 4, top 5 tight end. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Can I flip the script on this? Because everything it's not just you guys, but like everybody in general is all about Dallas Goedert. I've never really seen it. I literally picked him up off waivers last year and was so pumped to have him. And I think I started him once, and that was like in the back half of the season. And it was just like, I don't know what this guy does. He just clogs up a roster spot. He only has upside if Ertz is out. And let's just go to the actual, what they did with it. Week 14 and 15, fantastic. He was 12. He was 9 of 12 for 91 and a touchdown. That was week 14 against Dallas. That's awesome. Week 15, he had 10 targets, 4 catches for 65. Like that's respectable. But other than that, he went over 60 yards twice. Like he had a 66-yard game and a 69-yard game. Yeah, he has some touchdowns like here and there, but like you can never predict that. You can never know that you're going to be getting him. So it really comes down to what are you trying to get out of your tight end? 5 for 55 is not a bad tight end week. But is that what I'm hoping to get from my tight end? He's never like losing you a week because he's, after week 5, because he missed week 2. After that, he was always above 20 yards. So, like, that's good. But
to kind of go into that for a second, for me, Goddard starts that third tier, right? He's clearly, in my mind anyway, he's clearly worse than the guys we just talked about, right? There's a big gap in my mind between Cook and Waller and then Goddard and the rest of these guys. So, and I'll be honest with you too, I think 5 for 55 is about what we expect for tight end 10. And it's right in that range because there's so much upside. You get a touchdown or 2 and all of a sudden you're tight end 1 on the week, right? So as much as, and I do agree with what you were saying, Kevin, there are a lot more, good tight ends. I think what we used to see was you'd have 2 or 3 studs and then 30 upside guys. And you didn't know which of those 30 guys was going to hit. Now we've got this second tier that's kind of formed in the middle that we just went through that are guys that are consistent upside guys. This third tier for me, which can go on for infinity, right? I mean, like you can literally put almost anyone in this third tier for me because they're all about the same. Unless you're in a 2 tight end league and then you got to start reaching early or something like that. But for me, all of these guys, even Goddard and below, I'm looking at them once I get everyone else. Right. Like I'm not reaching on them. I'm just waiting at value to see what comes to me. So again, putting it like Goddard and Henry right there. Henry's got a lot of question marks too, but I'm looking at Goddard saying he's got potential. He had a really good rapport with Wentz. Wentz is a thrower. He likes to throw the ball. They're going to be stacking the box for Miles Sanders. Maybe that benefits the tight ends even more. Maybe Ertz gets more cover. There's a whole bunch of maybes in those sentences, right? So for me, that's why I like Goddard because he's got that Ertz upside if he's out, but he's still got playability if he's in. And even on games where Ertz and Goddard are both playing, Goddard could somehow become the tight end 1 for that game because they, the defense, your Niners or someone just takes Ertz out of the game entirely, right? So it doesn't have to be an injury, and it could be a play-by-play kind of a thing where you look at it and say, if I'm going to get Goddard and reach for Goddard in like the 6th round, I think that's a bad move. But if I can get Goddard or something like in the 10th, 12th, 13th as a second tight end, I'm happy with that. And so I think with tight ends in general, what we end up finding is it's either, for me anyway, it's either first round and you get one of your studs, second round, maybe you get a value. And then I'm not touching them for, 8 rounds.
Yep.
And then if Goddard's still there, great. He's my favorite of those that's left. But he's not really, I'm with you. He's not really wowing me. But what tight end 8 does, you know what I mean? Like
a tight end 1 on his team that has had an offense that
Let's talk about it. That
had Julio Jones, that had a pass catching running back, and still they had Tony Gonzalez, like has continually always done this and traded a 2nd round pick for this guy. I don't care. It's a new offense. He was drafted in the 1st round, even if he shouldn't have been drafted in the 1st round. He was right. And Goddard has 3 games over 60 yards. You know who has more games over 60 yards?
I'm betting it's Hurst.
Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith also has 3 games of 0.
Yes.
Like, Goddard never even broke triple digits. Like, you are playing him as, like, the safe. It's not even a safe play. It's like
it's not.
I don't know what else. Like I'm just gonna have him here. I'm just gonna put him in and fingers crossed. All these other guys, Hunter Henry, who I don't even have anything to say. I just feel like I have to have him in my top 12, even though he's drastically unremarkable. I would rather have Henry than Goddard. Everything that you just said about why you would take Goddard sounds like no chance in the world. I would take Gesicki. I would take Hurst. I would take Henry all over him. I would take Hooper over him because Hooper could be something that Goddard, you have to hope Ertz gets injured, and I'm never going to hope for that.
So let me put it to you this way. Would it make you feel better if I had Goddard at 12?
Yes.
Because honestly, you could shuffle that whole back deck, and it doesn't matter to me. That's kind of where I'm going with this.
Now.
Do it. Change it on the sheet, because I'm telling you, like I don't. You're selling me on it. You're selling me on it, but at the same time, I don't hate it, because like I don't love Goddard. I don't think you're hearing anything that I'm saying that says Goddard is the guy. I'm not standing on a mountain and planting my flag for Goddard. I'm just saying I like that offense more than some of these others. You've got, I mean, again, just to kind of go back to it, you got Hunter Henry playing with Tyrod Taylor now. I don't know what to expect on that offense, right? Then you've got Hayden Hurst, who was not even the tight end one on his team last year. He gets taken by you're right, the Falcons, who are great with that. And they had Hooper, who did great with that, who got moved to Cleveland, who already had a tight end. So like, how good does Cleveland think he is? Like, there's a whole bunch of question marks with that shift for me. And I still think Calvin Ridley is going to have a terrific year. So Hurst is an unknown. You've got my boy Jonnu Smith, which we'll get into in a little bit, and Mike Gesicki, who's really more like a slot receiver. All of those guys are kind of in that same blob of, sure. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not standing on this saying Goddard is going to be king. I'm just saying, like,
But when you put up rankings, this is more like the meta approach to, I think, the rankings or podcasts and stuff, is that if anybody's listening to this being like, I really trust what Andrew Hall says, what Gary Hatto says, what Kevin Tompkins says, and they're like, he has him at 8 over some of these other guys. I kind of like these other guys, but like, he has that, like, he is 100% at the bottom of a tier, and I'm very comfortable with him being at the bottom of a tier.
But it's the same tier. They're all the same level to me. So that's kind of my point. I get what you're saying. And if I'm ranking him 8, that means I like him more than these guys. I do tier-based rankings if I do rankings at all.
Fair enough,
right?
Yeah.
Like all of those guys are 8. If that makes you feel better, put all of them in 8. That's kind of what it is, right? And that's kind of where I'm going.
It makes me feel
better. That's why I'm trying to explain it, because as much as and I think everybody is guilty of this, where we look at rankings and we say, here's a linear order of the players and here's how I should take them. I don't play it that way. I used to, and I didn't win. Once I switched to tier-based, I started winning a lot more, because I realized you can get better value if you have tiers that you feel are confident about. So when you asked me to rank players, in all honesty, I was thinking about just doing 1-1-1. 2-2-2-2-2-2-2, 3-3-3, and just kind of saying, there you go, right? Because in all honesty, especially with tight end, my God, like tight end is one of the most crap-filled things you can get. But if you want a spicy take, Goddard at 8 sounds spicy, but it's not. If you think about, like, if I'm explaining my rankings, right? So I hear what you're saying, but they're also not linear. The gaps are not the same between them, right?
Totally.
So if it makes you feel better, definitely move him to 18. Probably, to be honest, he's probably closer, and that all of them are right there in that third tier.
I will definitely put Henry and Hurst in a tier, and then the other guys. But
that's fine. That's fine. You're allowed to do
Kevin.
that.
Sorry, Kevin.
Hey, this is, I didn't get any popcorn, so I think I probably should have. I had time to.
What do you think about? Well, wait. You talked about Goddard, of course, but what do you think about Hurst? I know we kind of went into a little bit of that, but like, do you think Hurst is better than Goddard or no?
Do better for fantasy, 100%. No,
well, so I'm not right. Even
they're not
right. So does Kevin, though. That's what I mean, because Kevin's high on Goddard. So I'm kind of curious where he is with those two.
As far as I do like Goddard, I have Hurst below Goddard, and I think it's a little bit of that unknown that, with the Atlanta offense, and if he's really just going to slide into that Hooper role and just, be a stud from day one. We don't know that. The offensive system is great. Everything around him is great. But until they put on the pads, until they throw balls to him and he produces, we don't know, but that's everybody in fantasy. But I just want to see it. I think he's a lock in that offense for 80 plus targets. Certainly, he's going to get the opportunity. They traded a 2nd round pick for him. They clearly think highly enough of him to be able to be installed into that role with a very capable distributor in Matt Ryan, with Julio, with Calvin Ridley, guys like that. And they also have all these vacated targets. I know that's Peter Howard's favorite thing. Salute to you on that. But so is Hurst in a great situation? He's in one of the best as far as the guys in this tier. But I just need to see it.
Yeah, I think that actually goes a lot for this tier, to be honest. And I like Hurst as a player, and I like him, as a person and everything that he's going through. I mean, he was just part of that mental health podathon we had a couple weeks ago and everything. I mean, great player. So don't take any of this as saying he's a horrible player. But for fantasy, I'm right there with you. He's got a lot of potential, and he could put up some stud numbers. But I don't like putting a lot of faith in something I haven't seen. right? Like I just that's my ability. I know that sometimes that will limit me because I'm not able to predict the future, but I'd much rather go based on previous experience and kind of what I can see and then build from there rather than just wildly speculating and hot taking the crap out of Twitter and saying Dallas Goedert's going to be tight end 2 this year. Like that doesn't help anybody, right? Like, yeah, he could, but that's not what I'm looking at. So all of those guys in that kind of range are right there. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, Kevin. I mean, Goedert's in line for a lot of targets, and sometimes that is all you need as a tight end.
Yep. And you know what's funny, because we've talked about all these guys, and you know who we have not talked about? Rob Gronkowski. And
not top 12 tight end.
I considered it. I'm not gonna lie, I considered it. The connection with him and Brady is stout, but Gronk missed a whole year. They're on a whole new team. Gronk could just quit in week 2. I can't put if I'm drafting a tight end, and I'm only drafting one in most redraft leagues, if I'm drafting a tight end, I want him to be, I don't know, at least someone I can lean on and has upside also. And I don't know what Gronk's upside is. I mean, yeah, his upside could be 3 touchdowns and 12 yards, right? We don't know. But talking about not seeing it, I haven't seen anything from Gronk in a long time. And even the Gronk that we did see was not that great. So I don't know. I'm with you though.
He's lighter or heavier, I think.
Well, yeah.
He said he lost like 25 or something. It's like, how you can't play the same style that you play and not expect to get.
He's an aggressive dude, and he's not going to be able to be that aggressive. He gets hit in the back once, he's out. I guarantee. He's like, I'm done. I'm going back to my medicinal, and I'm not going to bother with this crap anymore.
Yep.
So yeah.
Rob Gronkowski. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, you look at his price, and he's going in the same ilk as, you know, Jared Cook and Goddard and stuff like that. Or I mean, that price is pretty much the Tampa Bay offense. That's what you're buying.
Yep, and Tom Brady. And honestly, when I saw your guys' rankings, I fully expected at least one of you to have Gronk in there. I was so happy to see he wasn't. I'm like, great, we're not going to have a long debate on this because I just don't see it. Even in the New England offense where he was a stud, he was trending down for the last couple of years. And I remember I took him, I think, as my tight end in 2017 or 18, whatever it was, where he was like tight end 1 or 2, and he just had a horrible year. And he just left a bad taste in my mouth, and he's never really redeemed himself fantasy-wise. So, yeah, I'm not missing anything. He might be around in that like tight end 18 to 12 kind of tier, that kind of blob I'm talking about now. He might be in the bottom half of that, but in almost every case, he's getting drafted way earlier than I'm willing to take him. So, again, you guys are fine. Go ahead, have at him, but I'll pass.
He's going to be on a lot of teams this year, I feel like. If he does,
and then he's going to be on the waivers in week 3. Yeah,
he's going to be added and dropped, and if you happen to be the guy that spot starts him, and like I would love to be wrong because by far he's one of the most fun players. I mean, he's old man Kittle, so I would love for him to happen. I want to do a comparison, and I have to say, so this is moving on from Gronk, kind of our last two I think that we're going to talk about, and that's Gesicki and Jonnu. So Mike Gesicki with the Dolphins, Jonnu Smith with the Titans, and I feel like in my mind they are very similar from a fantasy perspective because they are the boom bust. But as you said, Gesicki is more of this slot receiver that's just a giant freak of a person, spark off the charts. But then like Jonnu is this like doing like end arounds freak of an athlete. Also,
he's like a weird fullback. Yeah,
he has a 1 for 57 on his 2019 stat line.
Yep.
Like, I personally can't, like, I was really high on Jonnu, and I actually, that was like going kind of into like the off season, and I really, really faded it as I started looking at last year and was like, this is way too boom bust for me. I have no interest in this. And like you're banking on like weird trick plays almost to like get him where he's at. Whereas Gesicki, to me, is like, I think he's the closest comp to what could be 2020 Mark Andrews. So given that I have said my love, Gesicki is my plant my flag. He would be my sleeper tight end, all that stuff. And Jonnu was kind of my fade. I want you two to kind of discuss these guys, and we'll just kind of go from there.
Well, I'll kind of jump in first. I'm pretty high on Jonnu. I feel like Maybe there's a little bit of bias because I love Delanie Walker. Delanie Walker was one of my guys at tight end. I used to get him all the time on waivers and before week 1 as a streamer. There was a couple of leagues I remember even not drafting a tight end and just like entirely streaming it. And Delanie was always there. So he was kind of like my nice snuggly security blanket where I'm like, oh, I'll get Delanie. We'll be fine. And I remember watching some of those games and he obviously is, he's not on the team anymore, but he's been getting older and slowing down. And I look at Jonnu and he's like a beast of a running back is really what he looks like. He's a tall, stocky, huge legs, will get through any line kind of guy. And I know as the season went on last year, he started to get more playing time as Delanie was hurt and all this. And I remember there was 1 or 2 games near the end of the year, and I was playing against somebody who had Jonnu Smith. And I don't think it was the one for 57, but he put up like 12 points or something against me. And I was just like, all right, Jonnu Smith, I guess I got to pay attention to this guy now. And I went back and looked at some of his tape. Even when he's not catching the ball, he just looks good, right? He comes to me as someone who has that possible Darren Waller, Mark Andrews style breakout. And I definitely agree that he and Gesicki are those two almost last round guys in your standard 16 round redraft league, right? He's one of those guys you can pick up right at the end of your draft and kind of snipe yourself because everyone else is going, you're not taking a tight end. And you're like, nah, I'm good. There's plenty, you go ahead and take Gronk. I'll be fine. I'm not worried. And there's always that guy in your home league that takes like 3 tight ends. He thinks he's being cute. And you're like, that's helping me. You're fine. Go ahead. I'll take more running backs. But so that's what I mean. I think Jonnu is going to be overlooked a lot and kind of going under the radar. And that's why I wanted to bring him up. For me, he is in my top 12. I think that offense, he's the number 2 on that offense. Corey Davis, I think we've missed that ship if it's still even sailing. Derrick Henry getting re-signed, I think, is a good thing. That shows that offense wants to run through him. They're going to be focusing on Henry. It's going to leave Jonnu to have kind of some of those flat outs and hook routes and things like that. I'm not worried at all. And I think Jonnu's got that kind of potential in that later round style to really vault up the rankings, and next year could be looking at a, top tier, top second tier kind of person. I did put him in this ranking. I put him behind Goddard, but I would rather have Jonnu over than Goddard. I mean, if I'm just being honest, I'd rather have him. So again, it's you're welcome. In Scott Fishbowl, I think I got Jonnu in the 10th round, if I recall. Yeah. And I was kind of biting my nails. I'm like, is he really going to make it back to me? I was like, either him or Gesicki, and I'm pretty sure Gesicki went right before or near me. And I was just like, well, all right, Jonnu's my guy because I'm with you. They're close. So I'm high on Jonnu. I'm not necessarily low on Gesicki though. He could easily be that team's second option also. Right. I mean, and you're looking at a possible quarterback change that might be struggling. You might have Fitz if he's having a bad couple weeks. Maybe they move to Tua. There could be some weird things there, but Tannehill, A.J. Brown, and Derrick Henry are all staying put. So that's kind of why I like Jonnu a little bit more and why I think he could be a tight end 3, tight end 4 kind of player in a year. I just really like his talent. So I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm planting my flag on him, but I'm definitely going earlier on him than a lot of other people in the industry for sure.
I have to say, my dad just jumped on our feed for the first time ever, and he just texted me and said, "You guys are speaking a foreign language." I have no idea what you're talking about.
He's not wrong. But Kevin, what do you think about Jonnu? Are you high on him or no?
I do like Jonnu. I really think that with that offense, I mean, A.J. Brown's clearly the one, but I mean, you've got the ghost of Corey Davis. You've got all these guys. Why not Jonnu Smith being the number 2? I mean, he's going to get the work. He's going to get the opportunity. I've been doing starting projections, and I have Jonnu Smith out to just shy of 80 targets, 62 for 772, and 6 touchdowns. I think he's going to have a really nice year, and I have to still rework my rankings based on those projections and take a deeper dive into that as we get into August and everything. But I really do like Jonnu Smith. I mean, just based on the guys around him,
or lack thereof.
Right. Who can you really hang your hat on in that offense outside of A.J. Brown, who I just don't know if he's going to take that huge target share. That's just not – I don't think that's just the guy he is in that offense. So, yeah, Jonnu I like. And Gesicki, we've gone ad nauseum. Me and Gary have about Gesicki, certainly Gary more than I have because we know how much he loves the Miami Dolphins offense. But, yeah, Gesicki, you throw him in the slot. I don't think Albert Wilson's going to be a thing. I don't think Allen Hurns is going to be a thing.
Chris Conley, I think, is there. Yeah, one on that.
Yeah. Just I don't think that outside of Parker, outside of Preston Williams, I think Gesicki certainly can assert himself. I think he's got just as much of a chance to assert himself as at number 2 than Preston Williams. We know how much everybody loves Preston Williams, but I think
Preston Williams is a boom bust. I mean, he's the kind of guy that he might go, like you were kind of describing it before even, Gary. Like I could see Preston Williams going 3 catches for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. Like he doesn't get a lot of targets, but he takes into the house. Right. So for fantasy, you might get 23 points this week and then 2 the next, right? Where I think with Gesicki, you're going to get, and especially in a PPR league, with Gesicki, you're going to be more in that line of like 5 to 7 catches for 40 to 80 yards, and then tight ends fall in the end zone every 30 snaps or whatever it is anyway. So you're going to get some of those. So I feel like he's a lot more of the high floor, lower ceiling version of Preston Williams. And I guess it depends on your team makeup. And I was actually talking to somebody on Twitter today. I think a lot of people overlook the idea that you need to have balance on your roster. You need to have high upside guys and high floor guys.
Yeah.
If you only go for upside, you end up losing in the playoffs because your guys are so variable. But if you only have high floor guys, you don't even make the playoffs. Right. So you kind of have to have this mix where you can play all sides. And so it really depends on your team, I guess. If you're more of one of those people that likes to get the high upside, boom or bust receivers like Preston Williams, which you can get after Gesicki in most cases, then you can probably pass on Gesicki. You can probably pass on some of these other, potential, like Henry may be a better option, right? Some of those floor players you're kind of meh about, and then kind of go for your late round receiver and give them some attention later. So, I mean, again, I think Jonnu and Gesicki are pretty close. I do like both of them, but I was real happy to get Jonnu as my tight end 1 and Scott Fishbowl. I was like, that's the kind of guy I'm looking for, a late round tight end. See if we can break that mold and kind of go somewhere with it. And then, of course, I got Everett as my tight end 2 to kind of go back to the Higbee talk. I feel like Everett could be the tight end 1 on that team too. Yeah. And again, you've got Kupp and you've got Woods and who knows what running backs and all this. So there's a whole bunch of different offensive pieces. But I think both of those guys are kind of going, I don't know, way later than I am okay with. I'm fine taking those guys and reaching on them a little earlier, just because in that late round, everything becomes a reach at some point. So yeah, I don't hate any of that.
I was really excited to drop a stat on you guys and say, how many games was Jonnu at 20 yards or less? What's the guess?
Well, knowing you, it's probably 7 or 8. I don't know. It's probably something.
So it's 8, and I was going to be like, half the season? Are you kidding me? And then I just looked at Gesicki, and I was like, fuck, it's at like 6.
Yep. Well, and Delaney was there for some of that year last year, and you had Tannehill kind of adapting into that offense still. And, it wasn't really. So there's a whole bunch of question marks that come from last year's numbers. But I mean, it's funny because I always look at that and say, even the positives you have to throw out, like with Higbee, right? Yeah. Well, then you have to throw out the negatives too. Some of that stuff you have to find that mean. And that's where you're just looking at the evidence you have. You're trying to play the best forward-facing football you can. You can't look in the rear view for everything. But I do project. If I did projections, I'm sure I would have Jonnu pretty high.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I have one more question, and then we can kind of get out of here. A guy in redraft for both of you here, and I'll do mine after you guys. A tight end that's maybe either going undrafted or maybe like a final round guy that you think can sneak into that top 12 this year. And I'll start with Andrew.
All right. So for me, there's a bunch of guys in that kind of third tier from, ranking 9, as we were saying with Goddard, or 8, I guess with Goddard. Everything from 8 to 20 is kind of all potential tight end 12 or better. But I think if I'm going to plant my flag on something, I think that's a tough one. But I mean, I guess Jonnu doesn't count because I've got him in the top 12 already. So you're looking for somebody in that back half. I mean, I hate to say it, but Gronk could be one of those guys, right? We could all be looking at this and say, why didn't we see this? Of course, this makes so much sense. So that's kind of a cop-out answer. The other name that I keep coming back to, and I don't know if people forgot about him or what, but I really liked Will Dissly when he played last year. I think he's another one of those guys that you can get for next to nothing on your waivers in week 1 or something. I know I picked him up in a couple leagues last year because he was just getting dropped all over the place. So Will Dissly, I really like. Dan Arnold is another one that's getting a lot of talk out of Arizona. He's one of those guys super deep that could become something. It just depends on how that offense plays. So there's a couple of those guys that are, I don't know, real deep nuggets, I guess. Are any of those on your radar even, Gary?
Dan Arnold is not because of that offense. They're going to throw him 2 targets a game. I'm curious about Hawk, just TJ Hawkinson. He's
Hawk and Fant both. right?
Yeah.
Both of those guys were rookies last year that came in with all this hullabaloo, and then they're not in the top 12 for any of us for this year. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. But again, Hawk's a great answer. Hawk's a great answer.
I trust Stafford. I don't trust Locke. And to be the third receiving option, maybe Swift goes in there, but I'm guessing it's Hawk, and especially in the end zone. It's not someone that I've ever drafted. I don't think, actually, since he came in the league, and including so far. People are high on Blake Jarwin. Maybe I do like Jack Doyle as a PPR guy. In terms of the two that I probably gravitate towards the most, I want to say Chris Herndon or Eric Ebron, and I just feel like they're both going to let me down, mostly because of Gase and then because of Ebron. So I'm going to go with Ebron. I think that Ebron has the potential to do his crazy 10 touchdowns again, because he's with Roth and he's just a big boy and all that stuff. And Roth is going to be happy to throw to him. But I would take the flip of the Will Dissly, and I would go with Greg Olsen, Iron Man. They don't really have a third option. They have Philip Dorsett. They might have Josh Gordon. Then they're just going to rotate through. And as I happily learned, Jacob Hollister, when Dissly went down, Hollister was the man. And Dissly's coming off of his second ACL. And Greg Olsen's just, he's awesome. He's literally one of the top 5 tight ends, maybe top 7 of all time. And he's just awesome.
He's got an announcer booth waiting for him. I don't hate Olsen. I think that's actually a great pick, and it goes against my Dissly pick, but I'm looking at it more of, I think Dissly's going to be there the whole season, and I wouldn't be shocked if Olsen gets a foot fracture in week 6 or whatever, or just kind of hangs it up, right? And again, changing teams at this stage in his career, I mean, he's been a great fit in that Carolina offense with Cam, and I worry, same with Gronk in a way, but I worry when you switch teams when you're a veteran, even Jason Witten, right? Some of those players that show up at this new team and they're just like, man, this is not what I had in mind. And I just wonder about their mentality. And so again, that's a little bit biased and just seeing some of that. And I think Golson's a great athlete. You're entirely right, but I just don't see him as a top 12. That's all.
I'll give you my real one. And Kevin knows this because he was my sleeper tight end last episode. And it is, I would happily bet money that Tyler Eifert will be.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it. Yeah.
15. He will be tight end 15 or better, and he's being drafted as tight end 33. Dude, it just he gets his OC back, who really brought him in his glory days, and then after that, who else are they throwing to? Is DJ Chark and what?
Laviska Shenault, I guess. Leonard Fournette. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I think Tyler Eifert's a great fit. Well, Tyler Eifert's a great fit in that offense. It's a perfect scheme fit. I think he, as a Bengals fan, I paid attention to Tyler Eifert, and he gets that injury-prone tag a lot. And I don't think that that's an inappropriate tag. I just think that he could easily not be injury-prone anymore. Yeah. And at changing cities, changing medical staffs, maybe that helps him, right? Changing his mentality.
Just for his back? He doesn't even need to go and sit in a sauna. He just goes outside.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe that helps. He doesn't have to deal with the Cincinnati Winners. But I'm with you, though. And Eifert was one of those I thought about, but I'm like, I just feel like so many people look at him, and he's tight end 33, you said? To be a tight end 12, that's a tall leap. But I mean, if I'm throwing Dan Arnold out there, which I think is not necessarily a lock, that's a 5-10% chance. That's one of those deep sleepers in dynasty leagues kind of thing. But Eifert, I think, is a terrific pick. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Kevin, who you got?
Well, you stole mine because I was going to totally just go off on Eric Ebron. And you guys are pouring over my Scott Fishbowl because I have Jarwin, Ebron, and Tyler Eifert as my 3 tight ends. But there's one guy that we have not mentioned, and if the bottom falls out of Kyle Rudolph, it's Irv Smith Jr., who I think I talked about Ertz and Goddard as not ships passing in the night. That's something that can happen in Minnesota. Irv is one of the most young. He's one of the youngest skill position players in the NFL right now, even with his upcoming rookie class. But I think, with that Kubiak scheme, I think he's going to get a lot of run in that offense. I think Rudolph still has a little bit left in the tank, but I think they're going to see, as far as athleticism, that Irv Smith is on another level. Who knows what they're going to, if they're going to throw Jefferson out there day one. So I think Irv Smith has a solid chance of being the non-Adam Thielen leader in that clubhouse as far as targets. But it's basically a free pick at the bottom of your draft to see, if you can get something out of them. If not, drop him, pick up Tyler Eifert. Fuck it.
Well, what do you think about Jace? I see all the Green Bay stuff behind you there. I know that you're a Packers fan. I mean, Jace Sternberger, I know Aaron Rodgers doesn't use tight end, right? We always hear that narrative, but they didn't get any receivers. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't add anybody really stellar to their, Devin Funchess yawn, right? I'm not really worried about that, but I think Jace has got a lot of talent, and I think he's in line for a potential breakout year this year. He's another one of those guys I could see, going at tight end, 25 that becomes tight end 12. And just kind of, on a stellar offense, if they get things moving, he could be a stud.
Yeah, I like him too. I just think that after Adams, it's going to be just a conglomeration of guys with 50 targets. And obviously we want to see opportunity when we're drafting for our fantasy teams. I just don't foresee it. I want them to surprise me with Jace, because I think he has a great skill set. I think he's athletic as hell. Clearly the draft capital getting him last year, they clearly believe in him. But we got to see it on the field. I'm not super convinced that they're just going to let Jace Sternberger run free like everybody thinks he is. Mercedes Lewis is still there and is still going to be in a lot of those packages with two tight ends, and they want to run the ball clearly. So I'm not super convinced, but I think they can use him creatively. I just don't think I think it's a better for this year, for 2020. It's a better NFL, real world NFL fit than a fantasy fit, at least right now.
I get that logic.
I got one last nugget, and then I think we'll break here. Do you know who was the tight end 22 last year in a standard league? I just realized because I happened to look at my league that was standard, so I probably should look at half point or PPR, but whatever. Tyler Eifert, tight end 22.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna toot my own horn and say he's gonna get there.
Well, he's better than 33. I'll give you that. He changed. It's funny because he changed teams, but you're exactly right. He goes back to an offensive coordinator that utilized him, and I think sometimes that gets overlooked. The OC changes can really make a difference on teams. So yeah, that's a good pick.
I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna look right now at my other league that's half point and be like, oh shit, he was 30.
Well, with any of those PPRs, your tight ends aren't usually getting, at that level anyway, aren't usually getting 10 targets or 10 receptions different than the other guy. They're all kind of blah in the middle. But that's exactly what it is. In any tight end, I look for guys that have a top 2 or 3 on their team in the NFL, and then in theory anyway could get a lot of tight end or a lot of touchdowns because they're in the red zone a lot, right? And so that's kind of, again, why I lean to Jonnu. I just think that team is going to be in the red zone a lot, and he's a big target. Dan Arnold, I know you're not a fan of him, but he's one of those guys that I know this is weird because that offense has a lot of moving pieces, but I really do think that there is a chance that tight end shows up in that Arizona offense, and they're going 4 wide, and that tight end is the 5th guy, and nobody's looking, and he just gets open. So I keep thinking it'd be crazy for the Twitter community would go nuts if he broke out this year.
Start throw on a week to week. You're just
yeah. Oh, I agree. And he's definitely not worth drafting. I'm just saying, keep an eye on him. That's all.
Yeah. Andrew, thank you so much for having us. For coming on. Sorry, joining us. It's
those Trulies are hitting hard, Gary.
I know. So I started out with the Trulies that were like the lemonade ones. Remember when I first had the Truly after like you told me about them? Yeah. And they were weird. The regular Trulies though, and their marketing is fantastic because they're like different groups, and you just go and you're like, hey, I'm gonna try a different Truly.
Wait, what do you have? Because I have the black can. You have the white. What is it like?
Yeah, you like the lemonades. I like the
just the regular,
the nod female ones.
Wow, it's 2020, dude.
Oh damn it! I forgot.
I like the white cans too. I'm just gonna say, yeah. I don't necessarily. I haven't had the lemonade ones yet. There's in PFN we have our own Slack channel, and Tommy's a big fan of White Claws and all those. So yeah, he's always popping back some claws. And I know we've talked a lot about that. I think almost every day somebody is opening a Truly in the PFN Slack channel. They're just like, yeah, it's going again. So I'm on Truly. I like it. I'm a fan too.
I stick to my always every time that you're doing a podcast, a seltzer, hard seltzer, whatever they're called. Those are always the best. They're low percentage. You can have 1 or 2, and it just loosens you up. It doesn't make you sloppy like other people that have been on our pod, Ryan Hallam. So
shots fired.
Just throwing shade.
And if they want to sponsor us,
that's right.
DMs are open.
That's right.
Yes.
You never know.
Absolutely.
Well, no, it was great having you, though. I really got glad I could be here. This was a good time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Drop all your stuff for your parting shot. Tell us where we can find you.
Sure, yeah. So I write for Pro Football Network, profootballnetwork.com, PFN 365 on Twitter. We've got our own Dynasty group, and it's PFN Dynasty on Twitter. You can find me specifically at Andrew Hall FF on Twitter. And I'm actually, about every week or so, I write another article and come up with something. And during the kind of drugs of the off season, it's always kind of fun to try to see what you can come up with that's a little different. So something I'm probably going to be coming out with a series, since we're not having a preseason, trying to, I don't know, uncover some undrafted free agents that are going to maybe make a splash for Dynasty. Some of those super deep guys that you see, I think we all play on Sleeper, at least at some point. You see them in the trending and you're like, who the hell is that guy? So I feel like there's a bunch of those names that we're always kind of like, was that worth picking up? Like, is that better than a guy I got on my bench? So I'm going to try to see if Joe Reed's a big one. Yep. He's definitely on my list. Yep. There's a couple of those guys where it's like, there are some of these names that we're not going to get to see because there's no preseason. And I think the diehard fantasy and dynasty fans that really want to know are really out there right now looking for that content. And so I think that's a lot of people are doing this, and I'm not unique at that, but it's like, all right, well, let's take a look at some of the undrafted guys that you didn't hear about in the draft. They didn't get any talk. They didn't get on TV, and they're not getting a chance to run in the third quarter of the first preseason game and see what they can do. So that's kind of what I think I'm going to come out with next, is a series of articles on some of those guys that you can just keep an eye on. Some of them may be on teams and some of them may not be as deep depending on your league, but some of these guys I think could be league winners, maybe not this year, but maybe in the future. And Joe Reed is one of those. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of those guys you've never heard of. Some people may not have heard of. That's who I'm going to try to target and see if we can find you some diamonds in the rough. So that's kind of what I'm working on.
Awesome. Very awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's take her out here. Oh, one more thing. Draft Jack Doyle. He was my Robert Woods before Robert Woods was Jack Doyle. So I beat that drum for years. But so next week, Gary, we're gonna have Lauren Carpenter on. It's gonna be real fun. We're gonna talk up some busts for 2020. I mean, who knows if we have a season? If we don't have a season, they're all busts. But exactly. But as we're going, we've got a season right now. We'll see what they do. But can't wait to get her on and talk some of those busts. So Gary, anything else you got?
Oh man, we just crossed the 1 hour and 30 mark. I was gonna tell you have 14 seconds, but we passed it, so you're good.
Yeah, my big ass mouth. So, all right. Well, Andrew, again, thank you so much for coming on with us. It's been a pleasure. For Gary, I'm Kevin Tompkins, and thank you for joining us on Fighting Chance Live. Have a good night, everybody.
See you guys.
See ya.